now.
This is 2OF Entertainment.
Welcome to the Lost Dollar Business Club, where we talk about business, and not just business. We talk about what makes businesses go up and what makes businesses go down. If you're interested in businesses, this is where it is. We talk about the global economy. We talk about global politics. We talk about everything and anything business related that affects your life on a global scale as well as a local scale. And don't miss after the show, Lost and Found.
Welcome to the Lost Dollar Business Club, and we are back for those who will have listened last week will have noticed a slight change in the not necessarily the format, but the faces. Beautiful faces now, not just mine, but David, and also we've got Nic Curlon, who I just checked his surname because I've done 145 podcasts of my own, in men's personal development, and the worst thing is when you introduce someone and you fuck up their name. So it's always good to check these things. Nic, first of all, where are you? Tell people where you're calling in and what you do, because I've only briefly met you as well, and I'm always interested to hear, how you got into business, what you do now. So give us a quick schniz on what's going on in your world.
Yeah, I think I'll try and concatenate that as much as possible, Anthony, because it's been a while. It's been a long journey, but based in South Africa. Currently in Johannesburg, so flit around the country for business, and we're in the sort of three main areas. The main is marketing, so everything from strategy all the way through to implementation. We're also in business consultancy as well, so how to grow businesses and that, because that links quite nicely in with the marketing side. And we've created an incubator scenario where you can incubate businesses, startups, and that to take them to medium-sized enterprises, definitely. So that's really cool, and that's come out of from nucleus perspective, because we're nucleus. It literally is the nucleus of how things grow. And then we've also with the introduction of, well, not really introduction, but certainly the explosion of AI, we're doing AI implementation both in our business, because it has to, with the marketing space, it has to kick in, and we're doing a lot of work there, and we are able to do that in businesses as well. So we have those kind of three tranches to the business. And I think I was dragged into marketing. I think all your life you're doing marketing anyway, you just don't realize it. So after many previous lifetimes, dragged into marketing about 5 or 6 years ago, and have really thoroughly enjoyed it. Punching way above our weight with the amazing team we have. And the rest is all in the detail, but I think that's probably good for the viewers for now.
I love it. And I was going to ask, there's always multiple questions. When I meet people that are running or working in big business, I've spoke to some people that have got thousands of staff, that is huge companies. Other ones that, building teams can be hard, because when you're small, you can be nimble and you can have 4 of you. But, the bigger you get, the more, the culture can change, and you have big, changes in personalities as well. What has it been like from your start of business to growing? Like, how many people now work for you and in the business now?
Yeah, we've it's a really cool question. We've got around about 20 around us, and that's in the sort of the various little businesses as well. So we are getting to exactly where you're at, Anthony. Is that the fascinating thing has been to create that environment which is super close to our hearts. We're a bunch of superheroes, and what comes with a superhero, so each of us get a superhero title, and what comes with that is the idea of the light and the dark. The superhero's got the superpowers, but at the same time you've got the dark side as well. And because we're very Jung driven, so anything that we put out there is based on Jung psychology, so symbology, colors, placement of things. So we're not just slap a piece of artwork together and send it out. There's a lot that goes into it. So we look at how to connect with the heart of the viewer. So within that fits very nicely in with the superhero thing. Is obviously all of us need to look at that dark side of us, look at it, love it, and reintegrate it back into ourselves, right? So that whole psychology around it is really, really beautiful, and it really is about who we are in the business. And effectively, it's been quite an interesting journey to have sort of bought half a business where we sort of taken on team members, and one or two of them were unfortunately quite toxic, and we needed to kind of really just whittle the team down to then regrow it. And then we've brought a whole lot of other team members on. And I think to answer your question as sort of directly as possible is the intention in the business. So what is the drive within the business? Like what is that team, that the culture that, like you were talking about culture, what is that culture that you want to cultivate? And then if that intention and culture is set, find the people who fit in. And Gary Vee talks about, the A players and the B players. You'd much rather have a B player who's part of the team and who's dedicated than an A player who's just running on his own. And I think that's really been really interesting for us to navigate. And in that, with this idea of the fact that if you're prepared to work on yourself, view those dark side of you and sort of lean into it and go, listen, guys, this is where I'm a little bit on the dark side. This is where my challenges are. But say, hey, listen, at least you understand where I'm at, and I'm prepared to work on it. Because the other side is not just raise it and say, listen, this is who I'm at, and you've got to deal with it. No, let's work on it as a team. And that talks to the intention of the culture. And then this really comes a little bit woo-woo here, but basically if you set the intention of bringing people into the business that are of the same culture, the same kind of people, and if you talk about vibration, the same kind of vibration, they're at the same vibe, with all that in mind, you actually build that culture and you can maintain that culture going forward. So it is really beautiful to see it play itself out, but it takes a bit of work. You've got to keep the focus there.
It's really interesting. This morning I was talking to a guy who used to work in the city in London, and we were talking about when I say culture, but just when you're building a team, I think sometimes you can sense someone's energy, but maybe you need to work with them for a little bit to see, it's a bit like meeting a partner, isn't it? You don't know them straight away. Exactly. And I was saying, I found it interesting having friends that work, let's say at Merrill Lynch that was based in the city, and they would get, let's say 50 CVs sent to them for, grads, and all 50 would have straight A's grades, would probably speak 2 languages, tick all those boxes. But the question would be then not how smart they are, but would you want to sit next to them? Like, what are they actually like? What's their energy? Because it's just as important. I sat next to people that I loved, like were brilliant, and other people who, as soon as you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, I cannot. Like, and it's not that they're not good and you're great. It's that you just don't vibe together. I mean, how do you give it time when you bring people in, or are you very specific on? Because business is not just about the products and the money, it's about the people around you as well to make it harmonious to some extent. How do you kind of go through that selection process?
Yeah, I think we take a dual approach. So you nailed it with the fact that there's almost like a testing phase as well. So very often in our particular space, we are blessed to be able to have that relationship. So you can kind of test out where people are for a period of time and say, listen, okay, cool, this is kind of where we're at. We need you for a 3-month project, and should that be extended, we can then we can continue the relationship. So I think in certain cases we have been lucky with that. The other side, when you actually hire someone into the team, is again it's a practiced skill. I think it is the fact that people have this ability to put that facade on, right? There's a face that you're going to have for at least 3 months, and some sort of sociopaths and psychopaths can hold it for 2 years, but
or go into government. Yeah.
There we go. So I think there's a skill that comes with listening to what people are actually saying. And that's what's really interesting. And I think the last few years of the life, studying a little bit, and I'm not sort of studying it clinically, but like just delving into it and researching it from a clinical point of view, a psychological point of view, as well as from other aspects, bringing that in and actually listening to what the person says. Because often people tell you exactly who they are and what they are, but you need to listen. Yeah. And those red flags, often people sort of like raise the red flag. They're like, hang on, there was a red flag there, but people don't listen to it because it's like, oh, but hang on, there's the A's and they're a really good person. It's like, well, yeah, I told you who I was, and I showed you who I was, but you just chose to ignore it because that wasn't part of, it didn't fit into your expectation. You know what I mean?
One of the most useful things somebody ever told me, he said, well, look, it's not about the 100% that you want from any particular person who works for you. It's about how much you then, as the manager, the owner, or whatever, how much of a shortfall can you tolerate regarding that particular person? So if they can because if they could do 100% of what you wanted, they wouldn't work for you. They'd be doing it themselves. So and they
That's a good point.
So they bring something to the table, and as a boss or whatever, or a leader, you have this expectation. It has to be how I want it. No, you have to look at it. You have to turn it around the other way. He does 95% of what I would like him to do. This particular person. Can I live with that 5%? And most managers are all bitching about, oh yeah, well, it has to be 96%. Well, a lot of people, when they work for you, they're all maxed out anyway. That's as much as they can give you. Yeah. And so I would say to people, look at it the other way. Turn it around the other way. Oh, you're 5% less than what I wanted. That's okay. You're 20% less than what I wanted. But, what you bring is enough in that 80%.
Yeah.
And not be obsessed on everybody taking tests and re-evaluating themselves and going out for survival weekends just to see who could swim. And oh my God,
David, that's spot on. I actually walked out of an interview many years ago because the first thing was when I sat, and it was a pretty large company, and as you walk in, you don't feel like you've been particularly welcomed in any way. And one of the three guys sat back in his chair, looked at him, and he said, so you didn't go to university then? And I said, no. And it's quite apparent on my CV. I went to work at Glencore, which, is one of the biggest companies in the world. So it wasn't like
the University of Life is what I went
and that was the first thing. And then literally at that moment, it was like red flag number one of like, oh, for fuck's sake, I can't be asked with this. And then basically after, I don't know however long, 20-minute interview, they said, oh, we now want you to take a test. And I sat down, and it was very comprehensive. And I think I answered about 3 questions. And I just thought, I just can't be bothered. I can't be bothered. So I said to the girl who was the moderator, I was like, can you come over? And she's like, yeah. I said, yeah, I'm finished. And I walked out. And I realized that, that would be one of the guys I'd be working with for 200 hours a month at my desk. And if I straight away got that feeling, it wasn't going to work. But this is where there's 2 ways I'd love this conversation to go, because it's 2 important points here. With the rise of working from home, would you say, Nic, that bringing people into a culture can be harder because you're not sitting together? People are kind of, they're what's the word? They're hidden because remote, they can sit remote. How have you managed to navigate that? Because I know some people that have said, look, both are valuable. Working from home is valuable for the right person, but surely building a culture must be harder when they might be in a different country.
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. I think there's one thing which I just want to ping on to Dave's comment as well, is that with this idea of what you're prepared to accept in a person and what you're not prepared to, or not prepared to accept, like what they're prepared to give you. I think this is really challenging, and I think it's really, I've realized the fact that it seems like a very out there kind of view on things, but it's kind of my drive within business is what can you as a leader, what can you as a manager do to facilitate the best in the person that's working in the team? Because it's not about... You can say it a lot better than me, Nic. You can say it. No, thanks, man. You triggered it, yeah. And I think it's really being able to work with a person and go, listen, this is where you're at. This is kind of, and it's not just that sit down and, hey, this is a disciplinary. You're not doing this. That's what you get to. It's none of that bullshit. It's about saying, listen, you look at the person as a human being and go, listen, you have 3 kids, you've got a husband, you've got a life, you're living in this kind of city, etc., and kind of go, what does that look like for you? You're pregnant, you've just had a kid, what do you look like psychologically? What do you look like almost hormonally? And obviously you don't want to go too deep into that, but you look at the person as a whole and go, where you're at, and how do we together get you to give the best of yourself? Because one day they're going to be, team members who like literally wake up at like 10 o'clock in the morning and they just can't get going in the morning, but they'll work for 1-2 o'clock in the morning because that's when they enjoy their space. And then the challenge is, how do you use that and then obviously reintegrate into the team? So I think, and it's a challenge because everybody hears this to be a disciplinary thing. We want this for you and that's what you got to get. It's not about that. It's about sitting with a person, and that's where the trust relationship comes in as well. When I sit with you and say, listen, I'm seeing a bit of a challenge here. Like what are the, how do we do this? What can we do to work with you? Then suddenly there's a whole lot of this spark in the eyes, and they're like, oh my gosh, okay, I can actually just let go and go, yes, I'm having a shit day. Someone bashed into me in the back of me, and the kids are flipping, throwing a ball through the window, and all that shit. And it's like, oh my god, okay, well now I know why you can't work is because there's 55 other things going on. Yeah. And then figure that out with them, and then work to it. But the pre-work is really interesting because that trust relationship, you can't have that difficult discussion when you've come in and said, listen, here's the stuff you got to do, go for it. And then suddenly go, oh, listen, by the way, let's have a what I would call a more caring discussion. They're like, hang on, what, like you actually just want to fire me. So it's, and that's the culture you're talking about, is that it's a consistency of going, listen, we're here for you no matter what. And actually at the end of the day, and this is really where I think big business struggles, and I don't know if they even get it right, is that businesses were set up as containers for people. Because when you, as a founder or whatever, like it's a case of, yes, but you're the boss. And but I'm like, number one, none of that is true. Number one is I've just got a responsibility, or I took it upon myself to go, let me create this environment where people can come in and feel safe enough to not have to do the shit that I've chosen to do, which is deal with, tax and all that sort of stuff, and what it looks like from an administration point of view, and also taking the risk. Because my responsibility is to take a risk in certain places and go, well, I'm going to take the risk so you guys don't have to take the risk. But like you look at anybody who's in an attacking position, there's hyper focus. There's how do you take the kill? How do you take them down? You can't then be sitting in an environment where you have creativity. How do you create? What do you do? You can be in one or the other. Obviously, there's creativity in how you take the kill, for example. But when you're sitting something where you're creating something beautiful, you have to remove that almost fight or flight type environment. And I think those two things, understanding where you fit in, create that container for the team members, that they know they're protected, they know that it is the best thing for them. And when you truly take care of the person, they will truly give you the best of themselves that they can at that point in time. And it's not manipulation, it's about true care, because that manipulation, that red flag you were talking about, people see manipulation coming a mile off, and they know that there's something off.
I think you get better at sensing it as you get older as well. And probably I would suggest, when or people I've spoke to, primarily men, when you're younger, you take more bullshit because you don't have the confidence and the wisdom to either spot it or say something about it. But the older you get, the less fucks you give. And I mean, David's always got that face that just says, I don't give a fuck, which I always love is the way forward. But David, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say I was quite amazed that Nick's turned into a hippie since the last time I spoke to him. I mean, this would be a way that some people say, "Well, that's bollocks." It's my company. You do what I say. This is what you're going to do. You're going to come. You're going to be in here at 9 a.m. You're going to, sweat all through. Look at the clock.
Yeah.
I mean, you think to yourself, look around you. It doesn't work, but then people still persist on having that point of view. I'm the boss. I decide. We spoke last week, didn't we, Andy, about, we're not the boss, even if you're self-employed, because you work for the tax man and for the bank. So,
Exactly.
So, but this whole thing about, why? Well, because I said so. That's not how it works anymore. Well, it does work, but then you treat people badly, you pay them peanuts, you get monkeys. That's all that happens. All they do is just is just grind through the day. And I applaud Nic for wanting to get the best. I mean, okay, he's lucky he's in a creative industry. So, you don't, the last thing you want to do is to stifle the creativity. So you're always looking for a way of, of feathering that particular nest. But it can work in any environment.
Exactly.
You work in a factory. Come and tell me, guys. Why is the flow down? Why is this not right? What's that not
exactly,
right?
Dave, yeah.
Tell me. I need to know. Sorry.
No, well, it's a good point, because I know even firsthand, I've worked in environments where the team is brilliant, and you all get in, and you're all very kind of different, but you all bring your strengths to the table. And one of the desks I worked with, a German guy, you'd say a fairly well-heeled English guy, a Dutch guy, an half Indian guy, a real mixture of chaps. And you all kind of, some clients kind of were drawn towards you. But I also know what it's like when something changes and a desk has that very dark cloud over them, or a group, a team or whatever, and suddenly even on the train coming into work, you just had
you see them. You see them, don't you?
Yeah, and it's funny how I always say it's like if you buy a house, you can live in an amazing place, but if a neighbour moves in that you hate next door, everything can change. And it's the same in work, isn't it? You can sit, especially the bigger the company, the more people coming in, the more chance there is of someone coming in that upsets the apple cart. But the other way I wanted to take the discussion is, so I interviewed a guy called Chris Barres Brown. He's done a brilliant TED Talk and written some great books. And one of his big things around business was, who's Elvis around here? And what that means is when businesses want him to come in and help them improve, he says, okay, who's the fucking star of the show here? Who's Elvis? Who's the one that everybody else is working, but that's the person? And I wonder for you, Nic, because the smaller the company, the harder that is. But for you, I see the rise now of the importance of big companies are a brand, but sometimes they need to be more personable and have a face of the brand, which is harder if you're NatWest Bank or something like that. But I just wanted your thoughts on who's Elvis around here, like for your company and what you've seen in your experience.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting question. I think there's two sides to or two answers to your question. I think the one is what the outside world sees, so from a brand ambassador point of view, and that can change. And we've obviously seen many companies over the last couple of years, particularly trip themselves up because they've chosen the wrong ambassador, and the ambassador is being a human being, and this is where we understanding human psychology, like we are so quick to there's one thing wrong and you take the dude out, like it's just cut him off at the knees. You're like, but look at all the other 95% that they did right.
Well, that goes back to the point I was saying earlier on, Nic.
Yeah.
About, can I suck that 5% up?
One wrong opinion.
Well, and I mean, you get one, a golf club incorrectly through your front windscreen, and suddenly a whole brand goes down. It's a bit rough, right? So I think the idea with brand ambassadorship for large companies is very difficult to navigate, because they are human beings, and it's so many times the fact that they've chosen the wrong ambassador, or that person has just come out as being a human being, and people are definitely not with cancel culture. People are definitely not open to giving people the space to just be humans. So I think and now, interestingly enough, with the advent of AI, we can have almost perfect brand ambassadors now, because that's literally what we're growing, is we're growing these ambassadors with AI bots. So technically you can have this perfect ambassador. So it addresses one point, but from a technological point of view, but with a brand perspective, like I think what's stronger from a brand perspective to what it looks like on the outside is consistency. So the human brain loves consistency. Well, it loves change, but it loves consistency to varying degrees. So the kind of average is around about 70-30. So it loves 70% being the same and 30% sort of change. And so I think from that perspective, the bigger thing for brands is, what does that consistency look like in the industry? So when I hit you on various social platforms, when I speak to you on multiple places now, is the communication the same?
Yeah.
That speaks directly to what we do with brands, is create a persona. So Jung has archetypes, and where do you fall within those archetypes? So are you the jester? Are you the sage? You know, what kind of space do you fit in? And when you communicate like with that kind of voice, because our belief is that a business is an entity. It becomes this entity. So Dave, I'm really going to woo here for you in a second, but
I like some sage.
Yeah. exactly. Anthony, to your point, where you're putting multiple people into certain in a space that creates an energy, and that's one of the things. Like, you put a bad apple in there, and it's going to create some. You know, you put good people in, and it raises the energy. And so, what I wanted to come back with internally is the fact that your responsibility as a manager, as leadership at the various levels. And it starts from top down, is that responsibility to train and almost reconnect with the heart, like reconnect with what we feel, because, you know, we've been taught, you know, the British had the perfect, like, you know, no, never, always stoic, always so, like, we don't have emotions.
Step up,
exactly. 100%. And I think we've been forced, and I'll bring a quick AI sort of conversation in here, is we've been forced to lean into our humanness and our, you know, what our feelings are, because AI is literally taking the brain off. Like, I mean, AI can do better than most people at everything right now, and even in its infancy. And so, you know, even just from a global perspective, we are literally being forced back into the heart space. And so that intuition, that understanding, that empathy, that sympathy for people, and being able to work with people and grow them, I think is going to be huge. So Anthony, to your question, like, that understanding and making sure the fact that you actually work with people and understand there's people there, I think is the biggest thing, because we've got to, with big business, it's a challenge, right? Because the recruitment team is totally different. And I mean, some of these concepts, like, it's just like, hey, listen, do you tick the boxes? Yes or no? You go to university? Cool. Are you this person? Cool. Okay, you're in the job, go for it. There's nothing taken into it. And how do you measure that, right? How do you measure whether or not a person's a good dude or not?
Yeah.
You're a fucking arsehole. Well, could you please fuck off? Like, you know, well, what's that measurement tool, right? You don't have a measurement tool for that. And then who do you get to measure? Because, like, one person's going to say, I vibe with that person. So it's such a difficult one. So the metrics are really difficult. And for big businesses,
but isn't that how the big business just thinks, well, we will eventually find that right person? You know, it's like a sausage factory. You know, keep putting in the meat, and then all of a sudden you get the quality sausages you want the other end, because the criteria is, like you say, do you have the right qualifications? I mean, I've worked with people who've had no qualifications as such, and have been mind-blowingly brilliant at what they do. Exactly. But society still looks at them and says, well, you know, you don't have the diploma, you don't have this, you don't have that. And I've worked for other people who have, you know, who managed to truck up on the right day at a university, put in the right date, fill in the right name, answer all the questions, go home, get straight A's, and you think, you know what? You don't know anything about anything. You know, I mean, sorry. So I mean, okay, it's really handy if you're a rocket scientist. That, you know, if you're going to put a fridge into space, it's reasonably sort of happy feeling for me that you know kind of like a little bit about what you're doing. But a lot of these job functions, these things you have to university education for. I mean, come on.
With it,
you know, we're just excluding so many people.
This is where, and I'd love to kind of, it's a fairly obvious topic to talk about these days, is AI, because, you know, 10 years ago, you would never have heard much spoken about it, but now it's, you know, it's a hot topic. And I'm always interested to take two ways of it. One is, you know, how are you implementing it in your business today? And the other side is, you know, where do you think it's filling the gaps? Because I do believe it will obviously take jobs. I don't think it's perfect, and, you know, it depends what the jobs are. And I've found it really.
Didn't the tractor take jobs? You know, I mean,
yeah, I mean,
we survived that, did we not?
You know? Yeah, and that's the thing. My question is, I always look and think, there's no way that AI hasn't been around a lot longer than we've told. In my view, if I had to bet my, you know, paltry life savings on it, I would say that it's probably been around. I look at it like, you know, Formula One cars have the technology on the cars maybe now that we'll get in, I don't know, 8 or 10 years. I'm making these numbers up, but you get my point.
Yeah.
With AI, if someone said to you, do you honestly think that, it popped up in the last couple of years? I'm like, no, I reckon it's probably been around for, who knows, decades. Maybe, I mean, I don't know, but I'd wager it's not that new. It's just that it's now.
It came in the 1950s, 40s, and Roswell. When when the aliens arrived.
Yeah.
And since then, of course, the Americans have been, sort of
pushing it down,
reverse engineering it all to us.
Yeah.
So we'll throw that one in.
And I saw that Trump had, basically promised another colossal dump of money to go into kind of producing AI systems and what have you, and getting, Sam Altman involved and et cetera, et cetera. But, taking the big picture of it for you, how have you implemented it, if at all, in your business? Like, how do you think it's helping you?
Yeah, so I think Anthony, I love the big picture sort of view. So from first principles point of view, my current standpoint on AI is very it's beautiful, but you've got to be careful. And I think the careful part of it is actually probably not what you'd think from a business perspective. Is that as a human populace, we are very happy to hand our sovereignty to others, to government, to our manager, to our partner, whatever that looks like. So it's always their fault, right? So we kind of give everything of ourselves to them, saying, listen, well, I'm in this situation because of you. I'm in this situation because of government. Government's not doing this. There's literally a complaint everywhere you go. And so what we do is we're well practiced in giving our sovereignty away and then bitching and moaning about it. And one of the risks, which I don't think people see at the moment with AI, is giving our sovereignty away to AI. And it's subtle. It's not a oh my gosh, this is you're running into a freight train. There's a subtlety to it, and the subtlety is the fact that we're not just leaning into AI for information, for knowledge, and things like that. What's happening is there's a subtle leaning into it too much. So people sort of really have leaned into religion. So what is it from a religious point of view? What does that lean into? And I think the risk is for those who understand the religion, leaning into religion, I think AI is going to take that space, because there's been a lot of questioning of, the control mechanisms and, how we've been led by the nose, etc. So I think if looking at that, there's a very subtlety to it. And if we believe that everything is energy around us, AI has to be energy. And so that energy that is being given to that entity, whatever that looks like, we have to be sensitive to that. And I think that's really where it gets interesting. So from a first principles level down, we need to be sensitive to the fact that how we consciously engage with AI. Now, the challenge is when you say, well, humans got to, how much of the planet is conscious is another question, but the consciousness to engage with the platform. That being said, the beauty that we have in the platform of AI is just phenomenal. The fact that we have this amount of access to information is just, it's mind-blowing. And I think that's really where, and again, there's a comment that goes, when you have the question, the teacher will arise, or the teacher will be presented, right? Is literally we are at the point where we need the questions, or we are at the point where we can accept the information from AI. And I think that really changes the aspect, is that, but at the same time, it looks at who's asking the questions. So in those two sort of balanced views of AI, it then comes down to company level. And the company level then is, again, being sensitive to what you're using. And obviously then there's the legalities of, can I put client data on AI? Who's going to get access to it? All that kind of stuff, because we deal with super sensitive, sort of market level and marketing strategies. You've got to be careful of that. But at the same time, the beauty of how you can take a copywriter, or you can take a graphic designer, or you can take a project manager and suddenly just make the efficiency so much higher. That's where the beauty comes in. But the interesting one is, again, to the reason why I said the question and the answer of the teacher is that the person using the tool creates so much more beautiful work. So the work is more beautiful, potentially more creative. And so suddenly you're kind of giving this weapon, as it were, to someone who's already well versed in the weapon or in their space. You start now giving them just a nitrous boost. So I hope that answers the question, because I think from that perspective, implementing it with care, but into people who are really, really good in their space, the beauty that comes from that is amazing.
It's interesting that you said weapon, because somebody asked me the other day about AI, and I said, yeah. I mean, when I was very young, my grandfather, he always shaved with a cutthroat, and he said to me, you have to be respectful of the cutthroat, because it's efficient, but it's also very sharp. And it's the same with AI. It's efficient, but it's also very, very sharp. So it can be a weapon, or it could be, like you say, it could turn me into that beautiful man every morning, or it could turn me into a mass murderer.
Yeah.
You know, and
I think, you know, as you're summing up nicely there, it is a tool. You know, whether the deeper, more nefarious level of, you know, Elon Musk wanting to put microchips in people's brains and control them from a mainframe, what have you, you know, that
is that not correct then?
I just malfunctioned for a second because I forgot to charge myself up this morning. But one of my, you know, again, it's a tool. So, you know, some of AI is great, and it's helped me with stuff. And some of it frustrates me, where I can see certain people that have become lazy, and they are just they're outsourcing their creativity to AI, which I don't have the deep statistics on how that will affect humanity, but I see it sometimes with some people that I used to follow that would create some good, you know, newsletters and stuff like that, and blogs and articles, and then, you know, one day you can just see it's just totally AI, and I you know, part of me understands it's probably saving them time. But
it's what we spoke about last week. But yeah. I think you know, 6 months, a year down the line, it's the same with AI art, AI music. You kind of we will eventually think, that was all AI.
Yeah.
So I think it's once it starts to grow up, you can see that it was a child. I think
maybe people will crave authenticity even more once this takes over.
Anthony,
yeah, there's a whole load of people moving into that. You know, like, oh no, let's start working with our hands again. Let's go back to basic stuff, because there's going to be a huge market for it.
We're on live video, and again, I know, you know, AI could pretend to do live video, but nothing can replicate Nick's brain, David's brain, my brain, and that's why I believe, you know, even in what I do with my work, trying to reach more men and help them build their better life, as it were, that going back to simplicity of literally sitting in front of a camera and talking, instead of having some scripted thing or something perfect, the mistakes, the swear words, the questions and answer, that stuff, actually, for me, I seek that out more now. I'm not saying everybody's going to, but I was going to ask you two things before we move on to the lost and found, as it were. I talked to a lot of men about business. I was on a Zoom call for an hour and a half with guys talking about business last night. One owns a big engineering firm. Another works for a weapons manufacturer. One works for a huge data center. So it's interesting to find out what's going on. But I was asked a question about, how can I sum it up? You know, basic advice for people that are either in business or thinking about it. And one of the things for me was, I've met a lot of people who have these great ideas, and they forget to work out if someone actually wants to buy your thing before they launch them. And maybe I was guilty of that before. And now I always have this thing of, listen, you know, come up with this brilliant idea, but before you start spending time and energy and money on creating it, go and ask as many people as you can, you know, would you buy this? Because if everybody says no, it sounds shit, then don't waste your fucking time. I just wondered, you know, and
that's a bit too black and white, though, Anthony, isn't it? But where does all this wonderful stuff come from? That all of a sudden it wasn't there yesterday and it's here today. Like, where did the yo-yo come from? You know, so, and all of a sudden it was there. Think, wow, why didn't I think of that?
They must have done some market research to think if people would find it interesting.
I don't know.
And my point there is that I know people, and sadly, who have said, hey, I've got this great business idea. And not that I'm pretending I'm an expert, but I've sat back as a normal guy who's worked in big business and run my own and said, this doesn't feel right. It's the wrong timing, the wrong economy for it, the wrong product, the wrong marketing, all the different stuff. And they've said, yes, but I'm inspired and I'm going to launch it. And then, funny enough, 3, 6, 12 months later, they come back and say, I fucked it up and, you know, it's gone down the pan. So for me, that was one of my big things of the technologies around now to launch like waiting lists and little quizzes and stuff, which you can share online. I just wondered, you know, your thoughts on testing before you start releasing something?
Yeah, I think there's always, it's always useful to do market research. I think there's two sides to that thing, and I think to Dave's point, it's not quite black and white. Is that firstly, people are so scared of taking their ideas to other people because someone's going to steal it.
Yes.
Yeah.
The psychology behind this is quite interesting, because are you scared of the fact that you're going to be judged for your idea, or are you scared of the fact that someone's truly going to steal it? And my response to people with stealing ideas is that you have AI now. AI is going to give you 4 trillion ideas that you want. That like you literally have access to all the ideas in the world, right? And so, and then when you give it, like when you talk to people, I can tell you now, 99% of people are not going to take your idea and run with it. Probably 100% of people are not going to run with it, because the other side of an idea is someone's got to pick it up and someone's got to apply energy to it. Someone's got to say to it and say, listen, okay, cool, I'm going to develop this thing which is a mouse. Okay, cool. And I developed the first one, and it's a square block. Well, that was pretty crap because it doesn't work. Then you've got to start honing it down. How do you move it on a table? Then someone developed a little ball at the bottom, and that can track it. So all these things are, you might have started off with an idea one. You can just look at the trajectory of cars. Literally, when it had the wheel, like you had a square wheel, and suddenly it became round because the rounder one was easy to push. And then you had a horse and cart, and then you had now you've got vehicles that are totally four electric motors per wheel, and the thing pulls off at some stupid speed. So that trajectory, but the way that's happened, both at the micro and the macro. The macro is we, as a populace, decided that we needed faster and faster vehicles, and so you can see the trajectory, because that's literally everybody kind of coming in and giving their input, right? And so when brand A comes out of the faster car, brand B copies it and then tries to bring another one, and then so there's this competition, but at the same time we're progressing. And the same way with ideas is that you get the first one, it's going to be crap, and then the second one you're going to refine it. And so when someone comes in and says, listen, this is a good idea, test it, talk to people, because at the end of the day, you're going to get some market feedback. That being said, exactly to your point, Anthony, is you may not see what that person sees. So sometimes what happens is, I often look at it and I'm like, yeah, that's actually a bad idea. But then there's a magic in what they say. They're like, yes, but I'm going to do this. And you're like, oh, that's the magic. Yeah. So yes, it's going to be X, but that's where the magic lies, is the fact that you've changed it ever so slightly, or you've actually addressed a market need. And often that's actually where the core of the nub of the discussion is what market need are you addressing? Because if you can address a market need, people will literally just buy, and then people are going to copy. But I think that's really where the specific is test it, and then to a degree kind of ignore the information as well, because you've got the information, but ignore it and be solid in yourself, the fact that you're going to make it happen. And to your comment of yes, but it all went tits up, the thing is, that's a learning. Like, you've learned how to not do it, or you've learned because I don't believe in failure. The failure is really what you expected versus what actually happened. And actually what happened was just hang on, that particular process or that particular way of doing it didn't work. That doesn't mean that you give up. It means that you change it and you kind of find your way around it, the same as how the cars progressed. And I think that is what people need to do. And often spoken to, with myself and other investors, you look at it and you're like, do you invest in the idea? And you don't invest in the idea, you invest in the person. Because does the person have tenacity? Do they have the ability to stay the course? Do they have the ability to keep finding solutions to the challenges that are going to arise? Because that's what's going to happen in business. I mean, Dave, in business, I mean, there's constantly challenges that come your way. Yeah. And how do you navigate that all the time?
Well, if we listened to what everybody said, this channel wouldn't exist. It's as simple as that.
I guess it is finding a balance, and that's why for me, I've done that sometimes where I've come up with a great idea, and then you run it by some people, and then sometimes you don't even listen to them anyway because you think, well, I think it's a good idea. So it's a bit of it is a bit of trial and error, to be honest. I always think you probably learn more from your mistakes and fuck ups than you do from when you win. Everything seems easy. You don't make massive lessons from it. Probably the same in sport, if that makes sense. Good. All right. Well, David, we're going to go into Lost and Found.
We are. Just got one last thing.
Just
very briefly. Nic touched upon energy, and I had this discussion as well. I ran a lot of sales teams in the past. It's what energy? What's energy? What do you mean? What's energy? What's energy? And so the guy's like, just imagine you're standing in front of a snooker table or a billiard or a pool table.
Mm-hmm.
Once you hit that cue ball and you give it energy, it starts to move, and then it starts to hit things on its journey, and all sorts of stuff starts to happen. I said, that's energy. And honestly, people just look at it as if they, think, oh, wow, yeah, you're right.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah. So you have to put something in, albeit a little, to get as much as you can out of it.
And that you can bring down to the core level of men and women, but let's just say men, because it's probably the primarily men listening to the show and primarily men I work with. But I always try and say to them, if you're trying to improve your life or your business or your marriage or your body or your health or your bank balance, whatever, if you do nothing will happen. You start doing something, and I've said before on a lot of shows, the concept of become a one night a week man. At least spend one night a week. If you need to change things, say, I'm going to look on YouTube, I'm going to take a course, I'm going to talk to people, I'm going to do something and see where it leads you, as opposed to just thinking, well, it's hard work, so I'll just do absolutely nothing. And then you'll end up a year later thinking, okay, now it's just, I know it probably gets harder as you get older to kind of cope with inaction and regret, basically.
But of course, you need all these people to do nothing, so in order to let the other people who do slightly more have more success.
Makes us look better. All right, well, let's go on to Lost and Found. And again, for us, it's about stories or things that either people have lost money, made money, found money, either amusing or deep. Which I've got something very interesting to go on to today. But David, run VT, and we'll go from there.
We're going on Lost and Found. Here
Ever wonder how millions vanish into thin air, or how a single dollar can make all the difference? Join us on Lost and Found, where we dive into the wild world of financial mysteries. From misplaced fortunes to unexpected windfalls, we unravel the stories of people, companies, organizations, and even governments who've lost and found millions. Lost and Found, because every dollar has a story.
Who'd like to go first? David, do you want to roar off?
Yeah, maybe Nic. I don't know if Nic's got something for today. I mean, we did. Anything, Nic, for yourself, or?
At the moment, Dave, unfortunately, I didn't. I apologize to everybody. I haven't got one for today, but we'll definitely prep for next time.
So these marketing people, they never prep. They do it all. They do it all on the fly.
Could have just used AI, but go on, David.
Yeah, well, this is mine, and I'm going to preempt it by saying, this is definitely found cash. Just have a look at this simplicity itself. This is a Dutch woman who moved with her husband to Dubai, who then found out that people like bicycles. And so she started to import Dutch bicycles. And now she runs this company called Adam Bike. And what are they? 5,000 bicycles further, and still growing every day because people like bicycles. And she's teaching people who had never been on a bicycle in their life, adults, teaching them and teaching their kids. So, it's not all about AI. It's the simple things in life. So
back to basics.
Back to basics. There you go. My found dollar. It's
funny on that. It's highly amusing that the British government, or I should say the mayor of London, who most people hate, but they've spent a colossal amount of money creating stupid bike lanes that go in and out of London.
Yeah. If you have a death wish,
are completely empty. And what's funny is they have floating bus stops, which means that you've got the bike lane here and the bus stop here, and the bus has to pull into the bike lane. So the people getting on and off the bus, you've got cyclists going past. So I have a real bugbear about that because it ruins the traffic. But my Lost and Found is I want to take a slightly, when I say deeper level, I have a story of a friend who was running a small business, and it became successful in the fact that, depends what you call successful, but I'll paint you this picture. He was able to pay himself around 80,000 a year through dividends and, a little bit of other ways of bringing the money in. So, a decent living. He was employing about 35 people in the local area. He was running a small office, and he was able to give the people in the office Friday afternoons off as well, which they all loved, because who wouldn't like to do that? And what he'd do at midday, he'd say, we'll switch the phones off and we'll all have lunch together from 12 till 1, talk about plans for next week, and then you can all leave when you're ready to. And what a lovely life. And what was interesting was, where you could look at has he lost or found, he then had people say to him, hey, this business, you could basically now branch out to other areas, and you could go, 10 miles down the road, it needs the same and the same and the same. And it got plotted out where obviously he would make more money. So you could say he was going to find a lot more money, but he decided, do you know what? Where I am with my life, it's more important that he was a man of faith. So he liked to do his Bible studies in the morning, and he went into the office 3 days a week, and he went on some nice holidays. And he said, I realized that, to state the obvious, more isn't always better. And he decided to turn down what people thought he was leaving money on the table and say, do you know what? I'm good with my lot, and I don't have to scale to prove myself or do anything. And I remember that thing quite a brave stance, because a lot of people would think, shit, let's go big and let's have more people. But what that meant for him was more stress, more teams, more meetings, all that stuff. Was actually he was able to find kind of inner peace, even though he was losing money, if that makes sense. I don't know if that resonates with either of you two.
Yeah, I mean, for me, every day of the week. That's only because I'm an old hippie, but that's and Nick's not far behind me, I think. But
yeah, Nick, any thoughts on that before we close out? Any thoughts?
But how rich? But how rich was he? How rich? He must have been mega rich in his life, in the society that we live in. To say, first of all, no. And secondly, I'm going to fill in all my own time as and when I want to do it. In the world we live in, that makes you a multi-millionaire.
Priceless. I have that written on my computer. I have a digital sticky note thingy, whatever you want to call it, post-it note. And one of the things for me is the aim in life is not to have to work, not to work, because we all love working, but you choose who, when, why, how, where you work. Is if you can have the lifestyle you want and do that, I think you are winning compared to people I know, and I bet we all do, who work in major companies who are fucking stressed out like of their head, who have got the school, the private school bills, which have all just gone up. They've got the payments for the car, they've got the mortgage, they've got all this stuff going on, and they have to work to keep all this up on the hamster wheel so they can impress everybody around them. And one day you turn around and go, was it worth it? So there you go.
There you go.
Good.
Well, it was certainly worth being on this show today. I've been really enjoying myself. Nick, stay with us after the credits, if you will, for some housekeeping. And I don't know. Are we done, Anthony? Yeah, I run the VC. Yeah. Okay.
I would say, remember, what I'd love people to do is, I want to connect with people who have watched or listened. So however you can, if you can leave a comment, be it on YouTube or what have you, or if you get it via, you've watched it via a link on LinkedIn or anywhere, give us a comment. Let us know what you found interesting or what you'd like topics to be talked about. And the obvious is to press the like button and subscribe and join us on this journey of business.
Yeah, and we're going forward. I think we're probably going to be doing some live shows. So that way people will be able to answer questions on the fly. But from me and everybody on the team, and until next week. Bye bye.
Thanks, team.